This is Taking the Lead, a podcast for B2B tech professionals, leaders, and executives who want to learn from female icons in the tech industry. In each episode, host Christina Brady interviews women who are driving revenue for some of the most respected tech companies in the world. Are you ready to get inspired?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Taking the Lead. I am Christina Brady. I am the SVP of Sales at Speckit, where we are helping you maximize every minute at work by surfacing the knowledge process that you need within the tools that you're already using. I am so excited today to have Priyanka Sundhar on the show. Priyanka, welcome to Taking the Lead.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on.
Yay, we're going to have such a good and juicy discussion. I can't wait to get to it. But
That-
before we do that, you are the co-founder and CEO
Yeah.
of 4pm.ai. And I love this tagline, get your 9 to 5 done by 4 p.m. Sounds good. As a parent, love that. How did you get to the point where you are now a multi-time founder? Tell us a little bit about your professional journey and what got you where you are.
Yeah, so I in a past life, I actually was a tennis player. So I, played tennis full time. I traveled and I was world ranked, and then I got injured. So I had to reinvent myself because I had this one picture in my head that I was a tennis player, and I, ended up going to college. I was at NYU, and I just dropped out after my first semester because I felt like there was so much out there that I could learn and experience. And so I ended up actually going to coding boot camp out in San Francisco. And the coding boot camp in and of itself was a startup. So I was, working with these founders that were, the coding boot camp teachers, but they also had this company that was a coding boot camp that they were trying to grow. And they brought founders in weekly to just speak to us while we were learning. And it was just so inspirational. And so from there, instead of going back to college, I actually became just fielding leads at a startup. And then from there, worked my way up to AE, and then was a first sales hire of another startup after that. So just got that kind of experience working under the founders, and then went to, start just my own company after that.
I have to ask, what made you choose coding boot camp? I'm picturing you like tennis player. You're like, you know what? There's so much more out there. I think I'll go to coding boot camp. For a woman, I love that. But what drove you to that?
I think it was just the idea that I can create something that
Mm.
really inspired me because, there's just so much to innovate and create, right? Even if you just look around you, you could look at a table. It's something as simple as that, but somebody created it from nothing and innovated it. So innovations are all around us. And I feel like it's such a big part of life. And I always wanted to just create something from nothing. And so that's really what inspired it.
Oh my gosh. And then that brought you to sale. I feel like there's all of these pivots that I'm obsessed with that you took where you're like, I'm going to code something. Love that. And then you went into sales. So why sort of the turn and pivot from that world, which I think is very, I mean, it's non-customer facing. It's highly, highly technical, to a sales role, which is almost like completely the opposite in
Sure.
terms of skill sets and work that you're doing. What drew you to that?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. I coded this website, and at the end of the coding boot camp, you have to go and pitch in front of everybody. And I just found myself like my hands were, palms are sweaty. I just could not imagine myself doing this presentation. I was so nervous. And I've always been, a little bit of an introvert, extrovert, I would say. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I mask it a little bit, but I definitely have that introverted side of me where, public speaking was just something that I just was so scared of it. And then I realized really quickly that, if you want to innovate, you have to be able to pitch your product, tell a story around it. Nobody just wants to hear a list of features, right? They really want somebody who can communicate to them and understand them. And so that became a big focus of mine because I wanted to be this founder, but I realized that you have to have these different skill sets to be able to successfully build something and take it to market.
Yes. I call that omnivert. I don't know. I don't know if I made that up or if I'm pretending that I made that up, but that is that like that introvert, extrovert. I actually think some of the best salespeople are that, where we just know where to spend our energy, like truly.
Oh yeah, for sure, right? I think the outside viewpoint is you're a salesperson, you're talking all day, you must be super extroverted, but there's definitely another side to it, right? Where you
Oh,
have to listen and, you have to really take in a lot of information. So, for sure.
that's exactly right. And so, okay, so then you decide I'm going to go into sales, I'm going to get comfortable doing this. And then did you fall in love with the role of sales? What sort of progressed you into then saying, okay, I'm going to go from being multiple first-time sales executives, which is difficult. That is not an easy sales role to get into because you're not stepping into somebody else's, role or somebody else's process where you're like, "Oh, let me just pick up what you're doing." You have to build all of that. So at some point, the builder bug bit you? When did you realize, "Oh, now it's time for me to go into the more aggressive form of salesperson and be a founder?" Like, what kind of happened to make you do that additional jump?
Yeah. So it was around COVID for sure. And I
Yeah.
I knew before that I was always kind of in the back of my mind just wanting to start something. And so there's always a timeline for me where I was going to get out of sales and just start becoming a founder. And COVID happened and I feel like it was a moment for a lot of us to just reflect on, what do we want? Where do we want to be? And I remember I was at this party actually with another founder friend of mine and he, has an amazing company right now. He's just super smart. And he told me, he was like, "Well, what are you waiting for?" And I was like, "No, I mean, I have a couple more years. Like I can learn a couple more things. Yeah, I want to get to this place and then I'll be a founder." But he was just, he basically said, "You got to take the jump, right? If not today, then when?" And so, seize the moment. And I took that advice after that. And I think literally a week and a half after that conversation, I quit my job.
Oh, I
Oh,
love that. Yeah, because there's never
for
right? It's all the big things in life. If we wait for the perfect moment, then the right moment passes us by every time.
for sure. Yeah, it's for sure, right? Every day is so powerful and nobody knows how much time you have. And so I think the people I see that are super successful, they're just people that seize the day that just have a bias to action, I would say.
Yes. Now, speaking about actions and productivity, which is something I know that you lean into very, very heavily with the company that you co founded. Productivity is a real polarizing word right now, I would say, for BDRs and AEs and CSMs. This is a difficult time to be selling. And I would go so far as to say that as many great habits are being built right now, while it's really, really tough, there's also probably a lot of really bad habits being built. And so right now, what would you say is fundamentally broken, if anything, about the way that we view, we'll call it AE productivity? Where are companies getting this wrong?
That's a really good question. And I would say, I think the big one is just that we see productivity as being such a broad term and we see it as, oh, you got to wake up at 6 a.m. and drink your green juice and, get your workout in and then get to the office. And that's the most productive person, right? Get your cold calls in. But I think productivity it's a you thing and it's so personal to every single individual person, right? And there's all this content out there that can sometimes be so overwhelming around what's the right way to do things, what's the perfect way to do every little thing. And so I think with productivity, it really is a personal thing. And I think that companies oftentimes see it as, oh, well, let's just set these really crazy targets and let's just do something for the whole team that can increase our productivity versus what I think it is, which is rep by rep by rep, just trying to understand what can make each individual rep more productive and what's the environment that's going to give them, the ultimate success.
Well, and it sounds like you start there by a mix of personal and professional because you hit on something that is really big for me, which is, look, you scroll any social media channel, you look on LinkedIn, and you have a lot of folks, exactly like you said, that are like, I used to be terrible at my job. Then I started waking up at 4 a.m. and going to the gym. And then I
Right.
drink coffee while I watch the sunrise. And then I cram out 300 calls and then I'm ready to start my day. And you're like, whoa. And they're like, and now I'm the most productive person. And I think, I'm obviously saying that in jest because to your point, other people see that and they think, oh my gosh, well, I don't wake up that early. I'm not doing everything like before. Like, I'm not a morning person. So is it really a balance in is it being a productive person in order to be a productive worker, or is it the other way around?
That's another really good question. I would think that it is. It's personal. It's being a productive person
Yeah.
that's going to get you to be productive, at work. And I think personal does tie to work, right? And that's why for me, I'm so passionate about what the future of work really looks like because I do think that you have a lot of reps right now that are struggling. Maybe they're burned out. It's not that they don't want to put that effort in. It's more or less that maybe they don't know where to put the most effort in, or, there's other reasons why they're not able to unlock that kind of best version of themselves at this particular moment. And so I think it's just all about that, right? Like, how do I become the most productive person I can? And as a sales leader, how can I listen to my team on an individual basis and help unlock that or help them, discover these habits or implement these habits that can make them more productive on a day-to-day basis?
And the landscape is so different now. When I think about when I was first in AE and when I was honestly learning, I'm going to make fun of myself here, work-life balance, which doesn't exist, but my version of that, right? When I was learning that, I had an office that I was going to every day. I had coworkers that I could lean on and could talk to. I was looking at examples of good behavior and I was looking at examples of bad behavior. And my day had forced structure, which I actually think was what helped me to understand how I could be personally productive because I had these markers that I had to hit, right? I got to be in the office at this time. I have to leave the office at this time. I have to have these meetings while I am there. My boss is right there. My coworkers are right here. And then I'm going home and I kind of got to figure it out and what that looks like. Well, since 2020, you've got a lot of folks who are entering the workforce who did not have those forcing functions of having to say, wow, I really need to figure out what's productive for me because I know that I have to be at these places at this time and doing these things. So it's almost the opposite problem where they've had no structure, nobody telling them how to be productive. And so they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants. I don't know if you see the same thing, but for those folks that are a little bit greener in their career, trying to find their groove, it seems like it's been a lot harder.
Oh, yeah, for sure, right? I feel like we're in the era of choices where,
Yeah.
there's so much more you can do and, you can work at any hour of the day, right? The flexibility is there. So you can, and, I talk to so many reps that are like, well, I'm trying versus calls. I'm trying to post on LinkedIn. I'm trying to do other channels. I'm trying to, so there's just so much that you can do right now but I think one of the hardest things is just choosing, well, what's the most impactful thing that I can do next right now? And it's really challenging. But I do think that, through all the noise, it's just, like, I think situations like this where we're talking on a podcast or, even my co-founder is a part of like an AE powwow group and just talking about, what works and sharing that knowledge definitely helps. But everybody has to kind of figure that out for themselves, I guess, because it's going to be different for every individual AE right now.
Absolutely. And it's almost you have to settle sometimes for good enough. I think especially on the personal front, because the professional front, you don't have the flexibility to just be, you know what? I'm just going to be good enough. I'm going to be good enough at my job, right? It's like we need to show up, we need to perform, we need to hit the number, we need to be raising the bar. And so the room for good enough to me is in the personal life where find your moments of good enough so that you can feel like a productive human and not let perfection be your absolute enemy. And then focus those areas of more rigidity when you are at work and developing really great habits. The hard part about this is sales leaders, to your point earlier, and I totally agree, right? Productivity is on a rep by rep basis. You can't tell everyone to do the exact same thing at the exact same time. It's not going to work. And those of you
Right.
right now who are trying that, it's not working, is it? So, as a leader, how do you step into a team potentially completely remote and try to identify on an individual basis what's going to make them productive at work? Like, where does one even start with that?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so challenging because I think the first step is really just diagnosing what is the challenge. And I think that's a
Yeah.
hard thing for a lot of leaders to do, because you're in a position where you're a leader, right? You're supposed to be this force saying, hey, this is the solution in all situations, right? And that's kind of the expectation with sales leaders. But I think a part of it is just being really open with your team and
Yeah.
going, hey, what is going on? And asking those questions instead of maybe assuming what the problem is or assuming that it's lack of effort that's the reason for this. Really just diagnosing that on an individual level, going, hey, how's it going? And what are the challenges that you're facing? And why do you feel as productive as you could be? Are there areas for improvement? And are there things that we can do on a daily basis that can move the needle to help you? Because I always think that the daily habits are, I think, in every sense, what helps with productivity, right? It's not like these huge, massive changes to your life. It's just the little things that you could start doing on a daily basis that can move the needle in huge ways, and even revenue, targets, all of that.
Yeah. And the idea there of leaning in and asking what's going to help you feel productive, I think the openness to listening to that answer is big. And that may be one of the positives that we were afforded from the last couple of years is almost that forced flexibility. I remember early on in my sales career, I hated having big customer calls on a Monday, especially a Monday morning. And sometimes it's unavoidable. And I remember my leader at the time would always push back on me about and be like, "I love having my calls on a Monday. Like, you kick off the week and you get all this energy and blah, blah." And I just, for like 6 months, I fought this where I was like, every time I have a big customer call on a Monday, I am not as energetic. I am not as productive. I don't show up as well. And then my leader being like, "Mondays are great." You know, and it was this like, and then it's what you're talking about, right? It's like what works for one, it doesn't work for the other. And when I finally said, you know what? If I can avoid it, I'm going to stop booking customer calls on Monday because I need Monday to set myself up for the week and get in the right mindset. I exceeded my goals so much faster when I found what worked for me, but I didn't have a leader that was open to that. And I get it that leader's job is to guide you in the right direction, but there's a lot of gray area there. So there's listening, but then there's also helping your reps implement and suggesting ideas as to what can help them be productive while being flexible. Do you find that leaders have a hard time balancing that right now?
100%. I think
Yeah.
it's so, because it's really hard, right? I think there's a lot of the mental aspect of just being in a position of leadership where, I think a lot of leaders put that pressure on themselves where it's like, we have to have the answers. We got to drive what's right. Instead of what I think, good leadership is, which is just understanding on an individual basis how to help your team and being open to the fact that sometimes your team is going to tell you stuff that you don't think would have worked, or your team is going to, open up your mind a little bit. And I think that that should always be the case, because sometimes you might learn from a top performing rep what could work that in your head, it would have never worked that way, right? Like, that's not the right way of doing things. Like, I'll give you an example. When I was a first sales hire, I was just so bogged down because there was so much stuff going on. I was on product calls. We were hiring new team members. So we were kind of like onboarding them, and I was trying to onboard them and take my current calls. So I felt like I was juggling a lot. And I was also on top of this commuting. So I was commuting from San Francisco to Palo Alto every day. And that was just nightmarish. Like, it was so bad. So I asked my sales leader, I was like, hey, can I come into the office only 2 days a week and work from home 3 days a week? And obviously now, everyone's like, well, duh. But
But
years,
then, no, then it was like, absolutely not.
right. So
Oh,
4 years ago, it was just a totally different world to ask that. And, she just sat there and she was like, you know what? You're doing good. Sure. You can do that. You know what? And you can, like, when you come to the office, you can come in whenever you want. And so there are days where I would come to the office at 10 a.m. I would do some work earlier and come in later. But because I had that flexibility, because she trusted me, I performed really well, and I felt really good about my job and what I was doing. And I think that you know, that combination of telling and listening, it's hard to balance, but just so important to empower your team too.
oh my
Okay.
gosh, absolutely. And then that comes with the sort of negative side of it, which is I think, and I know this because I felt it especially when I was a frontline sales leader, the fear in doing individualized rep productivity plans, as we'll call them, is time waste, right? You're afraid that if I don't get you on what I believe is a tried and true proven schedule, that you're not going to perform, you're not going to be productive with your time because I'm giving you too much autonomy. And then that is going to lend itself to time waste, which is very, very real in a remote environment. So, how do you find that people are combating this fear or like reality of a ton of time waste? Like, we're in the office, like we're plugged in like 8 to 5, but we're not working that entire time. There's a ton of time waste happening. How do you cut through that?
Oh, for sure. And that's also true. And that's where I think the trust is really challenging, right? I would always say, obviously, you want to lean in to trust because I think that develops good relationships on the sales team. But at the same time, I think the best way to just inspire that productivity is focus on activities, right? Because activities helps. Like that's what all of us salespeople, I think, need to lean in when it comes to productivity is we can only do our activities, right? And then the
Right.
results from there are gonna show for themselves. We got to track those results and try to improve it by, all sorts of measures. But another thing I learned from a sales leader actually that was really interesting, he started doing was these daily stand-up Slack channels. So just having the whole team post, hey, here's like what I accomplished every day. And I've even noticed that, when you have those check ins, it kind of almost holds you accountable because you're going, oh, well, this person on my team is saying that they're doing all this stuff. I need to have something to share. Like, I need to have something to show so that I don't look like I'm just slacking off and my whole team is going at it. So I think like there's really creative ways that we can adapt to this remote world, but still hold people accountable because ultimately you've got to hold people accountable. Otherwise, to your point, right? It's very easy for people to go, oh, well, meeting with my sales leader next week. I might not have to do certain things today or procrastinate. So I really like that daily stand up idea actually a lot of just having the whole team post every day. What am I doing? What am I accomplishing and why?
I love that the peer pressure of, oh my gosh, all of my coworkers are getting work done and I'm not. I must be doing something wrong. Because I think everything that we're talking about today is this element of balance, right? And so often we're super imbalanced because you could have a scenario where you have somebody who says, maybe like what I said, right? Where they're like, look, I am not great at customer facing meetings on Mondays. I need to be prepping for my week. So I'm not going to book any customer meetings on Mondays. And then they wind up not booking a ton of meetings for the rest of the week. And it turns out like they're turning down the meeting on Monday and then they're not getting them the rest of the week. And maybe for some reason they're not booking meetings on Fridays because I don't like booking meetings on Mondays, but so and so top rep on the team doesn't book meetings on Friday. So I'm going to do that too, which means I only have Wednesday. And then they almost wind up because they're trying, again, they have too much autonomy. They're trying to piece together something that make them feel productive, but then they're actually hurting themselves. And you have to identify that. And so I do think it comes down to balance, which feels really hard. Again, when we are all remote, like how you find that balance. So here's the question in all that. As a leader, leading a team, you're trying to work with your reps individually, help them be productive, help them develop their own schedules, their own windows when they are going to shine brightest. How long do you give it, or how do you know when you have to step in and actually give them some guidelines?
Yeah, I think it is really at those points where, because it's hard, right? Because you can't do it too late. Otherwise, you know, what happens, right? When it's
Yeah.
too
Yep.
late, then you've lost the quarter, it's done. So I would say actually quick because, in my opinion, right, when it comes to just being productive, it's all about the daily habits, right? So it should be such that if somebody is getting good coaching or they're saying, hey, this is my ideal schedule, this is my ideal, productivity, they should be able to implement that right away. That should be
Mhm.
something that's happening daily. And that's why I also like those daily stand-ups because it does, right? It shows you the power of what each day really is. And I think as a rep, I think a lot of reps have been in that situation where you don't take it that seriously. It's the beginning of the quarter. You give yourself a little leeway, and then you get to the end of the quarter and you're behind, right? So it's all about being ahead. And so, yeah, I think with the sales leader, if you have activities that you want people to be doing daily, or you have shifts in how a sales rep should work, then that holding them accountable is like, should be super quick. You shouldn't wait on that because it's not necessary.
Yeah. And speaking of things that are not necessary, we have a lot more tools at our disposal now than we did before. Like again, if we go back to the social media channels, I can't open up LinkedIn without hearing about things like AI or new tools and things like that. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's real. I can't help but think there's a crossover between productivity and AI. I am not the expert in that, but I know this is something that you dabble in a little bit. So where do you view sort of the intersection of these things?
Yeah, and I mean, it really ties back well to our conversation because it's just like that, right? In those moments where you want to drive those key behaviors every single day for your reps that are highly impactful and that are going to help them hit their targets, right? And everything else, ideally, is not something that's distracting them or coming up, in the day to day. And there's just so many little administrative tasks that us sellers have to constantly do, take care of. There's a lot of context switching happening now. So with AI, I definitely see it being powerful in just eliminating some of that administrative work and helping clear up a rep's day so that they can really just focus on what matters. And that I think is huge for so many reps so that they can just hit their targets and really focus on those daily behaviors.
Ooh, the sales leader in me is lighting up at this. So there's utilizing, because that's not like I've seen company after company after company do consistent, almost useless polls of their team to be like, where are you spending all your time? And then the results are always the same, right? It's always like, well, as it turns out, our reps are only spending 15% of their time actually selling. How do we fix this? And then the entire org goes through this motion where we eliminate meetings. We have like no meeting Wednesdays, or we like shorten one-on-ones, and then we get rid of superfluous tools. And then within 3 months, we are right back where we started. And it sounds like you believe the intersection here to really helping with that productivity and increasing that like 15% number is to use AI to cover some of those administrative tasks that are really distracting reps and stopping them from being productive at their core job.
Yes, 100%. I mean, that was one of the reasons why we called the company 4 p.m. was
Yeah.
just because, there's, I think so many of us have those memories of, it's 4 p.m. You have all this admin work to do. You just got off of like back to back to back meetings. And I think a lot of reps are like, well, should I do this? Do I want to do this? They maybe push it off, but it's still a task, right? That's like bogging you down. It's something you have to take care of. It's something you add to your to-do list. And if that could be eliminated and tasks like that could be eliminated throughout the day, I think that you could have sellers that are just a lot more present and a lot more capable. I mean, even as a sales leader, you can be a lot more capable of just diagnosing where am I spending my time and is it actually converting? Is it actually getting me to where I want to be? Or are some of my activities not getting me to where I want to be? Therefore, that's where the sales leader can come in and help.
What do you feel like are some of the activities that you consistently see that are identified in that latter bucket, that like these activities are things that I keep doing and they're not helping me be more successful?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I think everybody has a different opinion on this. I've seen
Yes.
controversial opinions. I believe that you will never get rid of the personal aspect of sales, right? I 100%
Thank
believe
you.
it. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
and people have said it, but I can't get behind this idea that, you're going to purchase software of thousands of dollars and that there's not going to be a person to tell you, hey, this is what's going on and this is what you need or listening to you. People need that, right? Like the buying process is crazy, but it's crazy because it's people, right? That are trying to make these decisions. And so you've got to have sales. So I think all the personal aspects, like outreach to me, like you still need to be on the phone. I don't think you can have a bot doing that for you. You still need to be, I think, writing some of those emails. You still need to be present on these conversations. But I think for me, the big thing is the CRM. And that's really where we're focused on 4 p.m. because the CRM is the internal side of sales that all of us know is the necessary evil, but takes up so much time and is so
Yes.
inefficient in so many organizations I've been in.
Yes.
That's where what we're really focused on at 4 p.m.
Okay, so now I feel like I need an example of this because you're right. Like even the work that my company does, right? We focus on making your CRM take up less time so that you can focus on your revenue generating activities, right? Like how do we make that CRM be more conducive to actually helping you do work instead of distracting you from work? I love where you're talking about this idea of incorporating AI into this piece. So, like an example of something that you feel like should be taken off a rep's plate in the CRM by AI. This is just out of my curiosity now, and I'm just taking my whole audience with me on my curiosity journey.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. So, what we do right now is we will basically take a call or a video call like this. And so we do the automatic notes, which, is something that some companies do. But what we do is we'll map specific fields in your opportunity or in your deal to specific questions that you typically ask. And then we pull out what the prospect says into those specific fields. So you just have a review interface. You can one click push it into the CRM instead of getting off the call, forgetting what happened, maybe having, questionable data in your CRM or forgetting to do it at all. So that's what we do. And one thing that we've noticed about, the AI, which is really interesting, is it's this unbiased listener in your conversation. So it really forces you to one, ask the questions that you need to ask to really hold yourself accountable to discovery, which I think is important for all sellers. And second, it just helps with obviously the workflow, and the time consuming admin.
Woo! I mean, nobody listening to the show has dirty data in their CRM. So that just didn't resonate. No one's gonna that's gonna fall flat. No one's gonna be like, not me. Amazing. Well, I feel like you and I could probably spend an entire hour just talking about CRM hygiene and it would make our hearts very happy. But I need to bring us into our rapid reveal section because I want to learn more about you. I think our listeners want to also. Are you up for it?
Yeah. Let's do
Yes.
it.
Okay. I have 3 questions for you. You have 60 seconds or less to answer each. Let's dive in. Number 1, what's your guilty pleasure and why?
Real Housewives.
Yes.
Real Housewives, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is my guilty pleasure. I have no apologies for it. I love Real Housewives.
All of them? Or is there a specific, you like an OC, you Beverly Hill, you New York, Salt
Beverly
Lake City?
Hills. Beverly Hills is always just so juicy. I cannot get enough of it. I don't know when this next season is. I need to know. But that is my guilty pleasure for sure. That and Shake Shack.
Oh, I mean, everyone here. Again, that's not going to resonate. No one's going to agree with you. Nobody. Love it. Okay, number 2. What's an irrational fear of yours?
Oh, I hate to reveal this, but it's
Do it.
birds.
Birds?
100%. I had birds.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I
Is
just
there a story there? I feel like there's a story with a bird.
there's a story. So we had this so in my childhood house there was a chimney and this pigeon came through the chimney. And it's just I hear this noise like something's knocking and I don't know what it is. I'm just with my grandmother. My dad comes home from this work trip after like a few days, opens it up. My face is just right in front of where the fireplace was and this pigeon just skims my face and ever since then I've been deadly afraid of birds. So, definitely irrational, but it's my
Yeah, I mean, you got breezed by a bird. No one's gonna blame you. And that's not where a bird should be. Like if you're out in the woods
right.
and you get breezed by you're like, okay. But in your living room, you're not expecting a pigeon in your face. So I get that.
Exactly.
This is
Exactly.
fair. This is fair. Number 3, if you could do any other job in the world, what would it be?
Yeah. I mean, this is honestly, I love my job. It's really hard because this is definitely my dream job and I'm very lucky to do it. But I'd probably own a bakery or restaurant. Oh, that's probably
That's a good one.
yeah.
Are you a good baker?
Yeah, I like baking. I don't do it that often right now, but I had a baking phase in my life, and it was a peak moment, for sure. It was like I
That's
made cinnamon rolls from scratch, cupcakes, just lemon cake, just all these different desserts, and I loved it. It really is it. Maybe I'll do it one day
Oh
still.
my gosh. I feel like you could do that anytime. I had a couple years where I felt like I was a baker and it wasn't good. It was not gonna quit my day job to be a baker, but I wish, and I love that dream for you. And speaking of that, I know so many of our listeners are gonna wanna meet you. You have this absolutely incredible infectious energy.
Yep.
Where can our listeners go to learn more about you, learn more about 4 PM? Where can we connect?
Yeah, so it's 4pm.ai is our website, and LinkedIn for I think I'm like one of the few Priyanka Sundar. So just my full name on LinkedIn. I love hearing from people and just talking to people on LinkedIn about, all these different topics, women in sales, all of it. So yes, please DM me and reach out.
Beautiful, and we learned just the tip of the iceberg of what you have going on over there, and it sounds really, really interesting and like you can solve a lot of problems. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing all of your skills and tactics with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been so fun.
Good, good, good. Well, that's all, folks.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Taking the Lead. If you're looking for more inspiring stories from women leaders in B2B tech, then visit us at motionagency.io/taking the lead.